So before we dive into this worksheet, it's really nice out today. There's a nice breeze. I have the doors open, and there's a gang of neighborhood kids gang, that sounds bad. There's just a little group of neighborhood kids that are like running around playing, blowing whistles, and being really loud. You'll probably hear them. Also, sometimes when the kids get wound up out in the neighborhood, my dog gets wound up too, and she'll start barking, wanting to play. So you might have some disruptions in this video. Hopefully not. Anyway, moving to the math. So for section 6.2, we want to talk about linear equations in one variable and then proportions. In the previous section, 6.1, we talked about algebraic expressions, and that's kind of like the start to our talk about algebra, okay? And then at the end of the last section, we did talk about formulas, which kind of sort of introduced the idea of an equation. But in this section, we're going to dive in deep to the idea of just an equation. Again, one variable, okay? So linear equations in one variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into some definitions. All right. So first, we're going to review the definition of an algebraic expression. So an algebraic expression is the combination of numbers, variables, and operation symbols. Operation symbols are addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and a lot of times we'll also use exponents. Okay? Those are kind of like the big five. There are other things that could show up, but these are the common ones. Okay? Now, what separates an expression from an equation is the fact that expressions do not have an equal sign. Okay? So that's the next line here. Expressions do not have an equal sign, and that's big. That's what makes an expression versus an equation. Okay? Now, next up, we have an equation is a mathematical statement where two expressions are equal to each other. So because we're saying two expressions are equal, we're certainly going to have an equal sign here. So an equation is a mathematical statement where we set two expressions equal to each other. Okay? So that means equations do have an equal sign. And because we have this equal sign, it allows us to do what is called solving. Okay, so when you have that equal sign, we can solve the equation, and that just means we're going to isolate the variable to determine the value of the variable. Okay, so solving, it's the process of isolating the variable to determine its value. And what that really means for us is essentially we're going to undo what has happened to the variable until we get that variable all by itself. Okay. Now, there are some other things here that we need to be really careful with. When you're solving equations, I'm going to add like a little star, and I'm just going to put you must maintain balance. Okay. What that means is when you get an equation presented to you. So you have some expression equals some other expression. We're saying, hey, even though these two things look different, they are equal. And our job is to find the value for the variable that makes that so. So what value for the variable is going to make this expression truly equal? Okay. So that is what we mean by balance. When you get this equation, the left really does equal the right. They may not look the same, but they are equal. So as we take steps to isolate the variable, to undo what has happened to that variable, we must maintain that balance. Okay, we'll talk more about that in just a bit. Okay, now as far as this worksheet is concerned, we're talking about linear equations in one variable. And I do want to put a little note up here. Linear means the highest exponent on the variable is 1. Okay, so that's what it means in math when we say something is linear. You're going to have a variable. In this case, we're just going to have a single variable. In the next chapter, we'll talk about linear equations in two variables, but the highest exponent is going to be a 1. Okay, so that makes it linear. All right, so for example 1, I just have the direction short answer. Sometimes when I'm trying to do two things that are unrelated, it's not easy to create direction, so I'll just say short answer. Okay. So for part A, the directions are to list two examples of expressions. So I'm going to intentionally keep things linear, okay, and single variable. All right. So to keep it linear, that means the highest exponent is going to be a 1. Single variable just means one type of variable. You can have variables show up in multiple terms. They just have to be the same variable. Okay. So I could have something like 4x minus 2. That's an expression. It's a really simple, straightforward expression, but that would be an algebraic expression. We could have something a little more involved. We could have something like -5 times 2z plus 4 minus 3z minus 8. Okay, we've got a single variable. The highest exponent is 1. It's a little bit more involved than the first expression that we wrote, but it's still an expression. Okay, now for part B, the directions say list 2 examples of equations. So in this case, we want to have an equal sign somewhere. So we want 2 expressions that are set equal to each other. Okay, so let's start with the first example from part A. We had 4x minus 2. Well, if we were to just leave it 4x minus 2, it's just an expression. But if I were to tack on an equals and anything else, okay, any other expression or even just a constant, then it becomes an equation. So let's say we set this equal to 5. Now it's an equation, okay? So notice on the left for part A, we just have 4x minus 2, but on the right for part B, we have 4x minus 2 equals 5. That equals 5 makes it an equation. We could have something much more involved, like the minus 5 times 2z plus 4 minus parentheses 3z minus 8. And then if I just set it equal to something, anything, a number, an expression, then we have an equation. So I could say 4z minus 2 times z plus 1. It's messy, all right? It's certainly messy. It's going to be a lot of steps to undo what has happened to that variable and solve, but that would be an equation, okay? So please understand at the heart and soul of this, an expression, no equal sign. An equation, an equal sign, okay? So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to determine if a number is a solution to an equation, and then after that, we'll start practicing solving equations.